Welcome to the Radical Success Podcast, where we focus on internal transformation to experience external results. I'm your host and coach, Doreen Rainey. Join me each week for insightful messages and powerful interviews to equip you to take bold, courageous, and radical action to live the life you want and deserve. Welcome to the latest episode of the Radical Success Podcast. I am your host, Doreen Rainey, and I am coming to you once again with another power-packed episode full of content related to insights and strategies and tips to help you accelerate success in every area of your life. And in this episode, we are talking all about regrets. Now, before I jump into all of that, I want to remind you that if you have not signed up for the upcoming Summer Success Series, you absolutely want to make sure you do that today. This is my free 6-week course that starts next week, where I am going to be sharing with you 6 elements of success. And we're going to be talking about having the guts to take action on your goals. We're going to be looking at the what and the how of getting things done. We're going to take a look at examining your gap. What is it that falls between where you are and where you want to be, and how do you close that gap? I'm also going to be sharing with you some winning habits that people who want to really move fast towards their vision, these are the habits that they take on. And we're also going to be creating your success map. So be sure to go over to DoreenRainey.com and sign up for our Summer Success Series so you can be a part of this upcoming free 6-week course. Now today, as I said earlier, we are going to be talking about regrets. I had a conversation with a friend probably a couple of weeks ago, and he made the comment that he wanted to live this life with no regrets, that when his time came and he looked back over his life, he wanted to be able to say, I just went out there and I just made it happen, and because of that, I have no regrets. Now, I get the spirit behind him saying that, but I'm not able to say that. I'm already out of the game because I already have regrets. And so I am always fascinated when people say that they have no regrets. I'm like, really? Like none? Zero? Nada? Zilch? How is that possible? And, I am a definition kind of girl. When I start talking about something, I like to understand what it means first and foremost. And so when I look at the word regret, it's defined as a feeling of sorrow or remorse. Regret is often a feeling of sadness or shame, embarrassment, guilt, and those emotions rise up after someone acts in a certain manner and then later wishes they would not have done so. And when I think about that definition, has there ever been a time that I've acted in a certain manner and then later wished I had not done so? Well, I have to tell you, my answer is a resounding yes. And so based on this definition, how can anyone say they have no regrets? And I'm going to tell you, I'll be the first to admit it. I have regrets. And I don't just have like a regret. I don't have, a couple of regrets. The truth is, if I really sat down and thought about it, there's probably at this stage of my life a pretty long list of regrets. If I were to take a journey back into my past, I can think about when I was a teenager. I can think about my years in college, when I started my career, when I engaged in certain relationships, when I started my business. I mean, oh my goodness, if you're asking me, have I acted in a certain manner in any of those categories, and then later on wished I had not done so, I'm telling you, I can't lie. The answer is yes. And so, what about you? Have you heard that phrase, I don't want any regrets, no regrets? Or maybe you've said that yourself. And if so, I'm challenging you to think back. Think back 20 years ago. Think back 15 years ago. Think back 10 years ago. Some of you can think back to yesterday. And think about your choices around some relationships. Think about some choices around your finances. If you're an entrepreneur, think about some choices that you have made around your business. You mean to tell me that if you had to do it over again, that you would not do something different this time around? So, I get the spirit behind having no regrets. But I believe that what we really want to examine is whether our regrets have been a hindrance to us. So when you have made decisions, and because of that decision, you experience sorrow, remorse, sadness, shame, embarrassment, guilt, anger, bitterness, any of that. Have you then allowed that decision to impact your future? Have you allowed that regret to derail you, to stop you, to prevent you from taking another chance, to prevent you from moving forward? Have you allowed a bad decision around your money, a bad decision with your significant other, an ex-boyfriend, an ex-spouse, a current spouse? Have you allowed the decisions that you've made around your business or in your career to stop you, to derail you, to get you off track, to get you off focus? Because I think that answer is the key to dealing with regret. And I believe that there is a difference between people who have regrets and people who live with regret. And so I'm here to tell you that I try very hard to have regrets, which means I've made some bad choices and wish I could have done things differently. But I'm going to tell you, I work hard on a daily basis to not live with regret. Because when we live with regret, that means we have not been able to move past that decision that we made and the results that happen because of that decision. When you act in a manner that you wish you hadn't, when you make choices that ultimately don't give you what you want, when you make a decision and it doesn't go as planned, sometimes we may say something or do something and later realize that it just really wasn't in our best interest. When all of those things happen, the biggest question that we have to look at is what happened next? What happened next? Because it is in answering that question that will determine whether you are someone who can learn the lesson and move forward, or if you are someone who lives in rewind and replay mode and find that you become stuck. You become stuck. And how do you know? How do you know if you've become stuck? Well, what I find interesting is that when you look at areas of your life where you have some regrets, how much progress have you made since then? What new powerful choices around that particular area of your life have you made since then? As an entrepreneur, man, my list of regrets, oh my goodness. I spent money investing in my business that didn't pan out the way I thought it would. I did marketing campaigns and events and programs that I thought would sell out that didn't. And when I look back, it was some challenges that I could have avoided if I had more education or done different marketing. So if you have that same situation, the question is, what have you done with your business since then? I continue to invest in my business, even when some of my investments didn't have the ROI that I wanted. I continue to tweak my marketing, to invest in marketing. I continue to offer programs and events and services, making adjustments along the way from the lessons that I've learned from those things that didn't work out the way I wanted it to. But you know what? I know some entrepreneurs who've become gun shy. They've become gun shy. They had that thing go wrong. They thought that they had it all planned out. They thought that the money would be there. They thought that this investment would work out. They thought that these people would show up. They thought that that support would happen. And when it didn't, instead of taking the lesson, having the regret and moving on, they've decided to live with that regret. And what about when it comes to your finances? Any regrets in that area? Maybe you have loaned money to people that you thought were going to pay you back. Maybe you made some investments or you spent money you didn't really have. There are so many decisions that we make around money that it's very likely that you've made some that caused you to feel a little bit of remorse, a little bit of embarrassment or guilt or annoyance or shame. And the question is, have you allowed those emotions to keep you from moving forward to continually seek your abundance? Or have you given up on your financial goals? Have you decided that it's just not meant to be, that you aren't meant to be financially wealthy, that you aren't meant to have a debt-free lifestyle? And so you're just going to stay in the financial cycle that you're in because you haven't been able to reach your goals yet. And I'm telling you, people who are living with regrets stay stuck in their finances. But those who can go back and evaluate those choices, pull out the lessons learned, think about what they need to do differently, those are the ones that while they have those regrets, they're able to move forward and create the financial abundance that we all deserve to have. What about when it comes to your relationships? Have you had some friendships where people betrayed your trust? Have you had some friendships where you thought that you had each other's back, and when it boiled down to it, they didn't have it? Have you been in some relationships where you felt like you were giving way more than you were receiving? And so now you've become a little gun shy. You're not friendly. You're not reaching out. You're not seeking connection. And you are robbing yourself of the opportunity to be in relationship with people who will support you, who will cheer you on, who will have your back, who will give just as much as they receive. And so whenever I talk about regrets, people try to figure out, how do I know if I am living with regrets or if I have actually moved on using the lessons to further the cause to reaching my goals? Well, I want to give you 3 signs that you are living with regret. The first sign is that you tell the story of that situation over and over and over and over and over again. And you tell it to just about anybody who will listen to it. You may have told that story to someone sitting beside you on the plane. You may have told that story to one of your coworkers. You may have told that story to some family members. You may still be telling that story to some friends. And those stories, they usually go a little something like this. Well, way back in 1995, I was dating this guy and he cheated on me. And so all men are dogs and I haven't had a good relationship since. And there's no good men out there, because he did me so wrong. That's a sign that you are living with regret. And if other people can tell your story almost verbatim, almost as good as you tell it, then it may be time to examine the lessons and move on. Another sign that you are living with regret is that you use it as an excuse not to move forward. Sometimes I hear, women say, well, you can't be friends with women because they get jealous, they get catty, they get petty. Way back in 2003, I had this friend and I was doing well and I was moving forward with my goals and my career was taking off and my relationship was going well and she was just jealous and she sabotaged everything that I had going on. And when she did that, I retaliated and I cut her off and I refused to speak to her. And you have used that as an excuse not to foster new relationships, not to foster new friendships. Another sign that you might be living with regret is that when you think about that particular area of your life, when you think about the bad decisions around your finances, your relationships, your business, your career, and you have basically adopted this mantra that says, better safe than sorry. I would start that business, but I don't want to take a risk. I tried this before and it didn't work out. Better safe than sorry. Man, that looks like a good investment. That looks like something that if I put my money into that, man, it could really grow. It could really produce some income for me. Ooh, but you know what? Last time I tried that, I lost all my money. Better safe than sorry. Or, man, he is really nice. Or, oh my goodness, she's really nice. Maybe I should take the time and get to know them. Maybe I should say yes to coffee. Maybe I should say yes to dinner. Maybe I should say yes to a movie. Man, but all men are dogs. All women, they don't treat you right. They just want to use you. So I'm not going to accept that coffee date. I'm not going to accept that dinner date. Better safe than sorry. So if you are dealing with any one of these three, if you are telling that story over and over again about what happened, if you are using that scenario as an excuse to stay stuck, to not move forward, if you have retreated into a safety net where you're living by the words, better safe than sorry, in that particular area of your life, then there is a very strong chance that you are living with regret. Now, you know how we do it here on the Radical Success Podcast. We just don't want to open you up and show you what could be going on in your life. We want to be able to help you move past any challenges that you may discover as a result of listening to this podcast. And so maybe, and I hope that you're running a few scenarios through your head right now. You're thinking about your money. You're thinking about your business. You're thinking about relationships and your career. You're thinking about health. You're thinking about how you have been dealing with your parents or your children. And you're like, man, I have been exhibiting one of these signs of living with regret. Or maybe you've been exhibiting two or all three. Okay, now what? You've shown me all this, Doreen. You've highlighted where I may need to take a closer look at these particular areas. What do I do? How do I move from living with regret to just taking the lesson and being able to move forward? Well, I'm going to give you 3 steps for that as well. So step number 1, give yourself grace and compassion. You are not alone. You are not the only one who has experienced some sadness, some shame, some regret, some anger, some bitterness, some sorrow, some remorse over a decision that you made. I already told you, I have a laundry list of regrets that I could share with you. And so just give yourself some grace. It happens. It's called life. We make some bad choices. Sometimes we make them even when we know we should make a different choice. And sometimes we make them when we just don't know any better. But we all make them. We all have some form of regret. And so give yourself some grace. Give yourself some compassion. Pat yourself on the back and say, hey, let's just chalk it up as a lesson learned. Let's sit down. Let's think through what can I pull out of this that can help me in the future? And what can I leave right here, never to pick up ever again? And just take a deep breath and say, hey, it happened. I'm going to give myself some grace and compassion, and I'm going to move forward. That's the first step. The second step is to literally write down the lessons that you learned from that situation. When I speak at events, a lot of times I will tell this story about a business deal that went way south over 4 years ago now, maybe 5 years ago. And I was so excited about this business deal. And not only was I excited about the potential revenue that it could generate for my business, but I also put up a significant investment into this business deal to the tune of, 6 figures plus. And right before everything was set to take off, the deal fell apart. I mean, completely fell apart. The contract fell apart, the deal fell apart, the people I was in relationship with inside of this business deal fell apart. And that was just as painful as the money piece. And oh my goodness, was I angry and bitter and regretful about just getting in this whole thing. And I was mad at them and I was mad at me. And it was a jacked up situation. And it took me a minute to move past living with regret. And I tell you that because sometimes we need a little breathing room. Sometimes we don't get a switch overnight of moving from living with regret to taking the lessons. But one of the ways that you can accelerate that process is to literally grab a pen and paper and write down the lessons that you learned from that situation. And that's exactly what I did in that business deal. I went back and I thought through every part of that process, from the moment the relationship started, to the pitch, to the contract negotiations, to the marketing strategy, the revenue projections, all of the meetings, all of the conversations, the timelines, the project management of it. I went through every area of that deal and dissected it. And I came up with, let's just say, 10 to 12 strong lessons I learned from that deal going bad. And these were lessons that I could not only apply to my next business deal, but I could also apply to my business in general. And I also could apply to some other areas of my life in terms of relationships. And so I'm able to take that very, very, very frustrating situation where I lost money, I lost a relationship, it impacted my business, it impacted my bottom line. And the lessons I pulled out of that have helped me to structure better business deals. It has helped me to manage business deals and manage projects differently and better. And it's kept me out of a situation where I would ever experience that type of loss again. And so it may even be painful to go back to that situation. But going back and writing out the lessons, I'm talking pen to paper, can help make a huge difference in moving you forward from that situation. And then a final step you can take to move from living with regrets to now moving forward is to take one powerful action step in that area right now. Like today, as soon as possible. To take one action step in that area right now, no matter how small you think it is. Just take one action. Made some bad decisions around your finances? You've been feeling stuck, feeling like you're in a cycle of debt, or a cycle of loss, or a cycle of always being short, a cycle of not experiencing abundance. What one action can you take today? Maybe it's to call a creditor, make some arrangements. Maybe it's to open up a savings account. Maybe it's to start investing in your 401k. Maybe it's to stop saying yes to giving people money when you really have a plan for your finances that you can't meet because you're giving other people money. What small action step or big action step can you take? By doing these three things, you can begin to get unstuck. You can begin to experience new choices in that area. You can begin to make new decisions in that area. You can start to act in a certain way, create an alternative decision that will now move you forward in that area that you have been experiencing stuckness in. And when you allow yourself to move from living with regrets to taking the lessons from the regret and moving forward, man, the weight that is lifted from your shoulders is tangible. And you will begin to feel lighter. You'll begin to feel freer. Your energy will rise. Your motivation will rise. And you'll begin to get excited about some areas, about some things in your life that maybe you haven't been excited about in a very long time. And so I hope that this podcast that has been all about regrets has shifted your perspective when it comes to dealing with some decisions that you may have made in the past that didn't work out the way you wanted. I hope it shifted your perspective about what it means to have regrets. And I hope you've been able to see that if there are some areas where you have been living with regret, that there is a way out. And that way out simply involves you having grace and compassion with yourself, writing out the lessons that you learned from that experience, and taking one powerful action step, no matter how small it is, to move you forward in that area. And so, of course, I would love to hear from you. I want to know, what is your biggest nugget, your aha, your takeaway from this episode of the Radical Success Podcast? You can leave a comment right here on our blog if you're listening on the blog. You can also tweet me out at Doreen Rainey. You can hit me up on Facebook. I am at Coach Doreen Rainey. I just want to know from you how this podcast has impacted you. So, as always, I would encourage you to remember that it is through an internal transformation that we experience external results. And dealing with this thing called regret is a big step in that direction of creating internal transformation for you. Thank you so much for tuning in, for listening. Be sure to share this podcast with your family and friends. If you're getting something out of this, if it's been beneficial to you, I know it will be beneficial to them. So be sure to hit that share button and let other people know all about the Radical Success Podcast. And until next time, stay radical. Thanks for listening to the Radical Success Podcast. We would love to hear from you. Be sure to head over to iTunes and subscribe, rate, and leave a review. Until next time, stay radical.